So, all right, let's get back to the main core thing of this seminar, the Exploratory Data Visualization Workshop Part 2. We want to get into like visualizing the time series data. If you have missed the part 1, which I covered visualizing the summarized data by using bar chart and line chart and a bubble chart, pretty basic stuff. I highly recommend you to take a look at the video and also the slide, and those information are on our website. Okay, so let's start. So we have a tons of stuff to cover as always. So starting from like aggregating the data and then towards the end, how to show sort of like a smoothing curve or trend line to understand the overall trend. And then, but the key thing here is something to do with the time series data. Time series data, that sounds kind of like, complicated stuff, but it's actually just a date and time data. That's it. So, many times actually the data you get has some kind of time information or the date information. You get the time series data. So, and then like you want to do a little bit different from like, just looking at the categorical or numerical data with bar chart, like you might want to apply some of the techniques. So those are the things I like to introduce. Okay, so the data we're going to use the two types of data today. One is the Airbnb data, which is the same data that we use in the part 1. And also later, I'm going to introduce another type of data. It's called stock price data. Okay, so the Airbnb, so this data, like each row represent each property, such as apartment or hotel on the Airbnb. And then just in case if you don't have it, you can easily access the data, like open data catalog, find the Airbnb New York, and import that data. The steps are in the slides, and that I'm going to share with you guys after this, so you can import the data as well. Okay. So now, first questions. So how is the trend of the newly added properties at Airbnb over the last years? Has it been increasing or decreasing? Many properties keep getting added at the Airbnb. Those are the things that we want to see. Okay, to answer, I'm gonna just get into right away. So here is the Airbnb New York City data. Here's a summary view. And then maybe like we should start from the table view. So each row represents each property. And then the key thing here is that there's this column called host since. So this is a date that this particular given property get on the Airbnb. They started it operating on the Airbnb. Okay, so and by using this information, we can see, like for example, like in 2008, how many properties were added to the Airbnb, or more like granular level, 2008 September, how many properties were added, and then we want to see that trend throughout the years or throughout the months. So that's what we want to do. It's pretty basic stuff I'm talking about, I think, but nonetheless, let's get started. So I'm going to create a new chart, and then let's start with a line chart. And then typically, I think at the part 1, I mentioned the difference between line chart and bar chart has, good and bad. Not bad so much. It's just like different things they're good at. So for the time series data, line chart usually works better. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to make sure the chat window, could you also record? Can I record live? Can I? Okay, yes, this session is being recorded though, by the way. So you can take watch that after this. I'm gonna share it with you guys. Okay, so here's the line chart, and I'm gonna access the host since column. Okay, so I get this chart, and then the y-axis, so that height is the number of rows, so which is basically perfect because I want to see like how many properties were added at any given time. And that when I said at any given time, this is what we see in the 2002. Next data point is actually 2013, and the next data point is 2014. And that's because here, when you see, it says round year. So all the dates in a given year are rounded, or more precisely floored to the first day of the year. So what does this mean? This is sometimes tricky. I get questions all the time. So data aggregation level. So like data aggregation level is about how you want to aggregate the data before you visualize with a line chart or bar chart. So round, what that round means. So let's say like the one we have is a round with year. That means, let's say that we have the 2020. All the dates become 2020 January 1st. So it might not be the precise word to use round, but it's more to do more like we call it floor. But nonetheless, all the dates become the first day of the year. And the same thing with the 2019, all the dates become the 2019 January 1st. And a similar way, for example, like if we round it with months in the exploratory, and then that becomes the first day of a given month. If it's January, then it becomes January 1st. If it's February, becomes February 1st. Note though, that year information is still there. So like when I say the January 1st, meaning if that is a 2020, then 2020 January 1st. If that was 2018, then become 2018 January 1st. And a similar thing is for the week, like then like first, that becomes the first week of that a given week. So for example, like it's January 12 or 14 or 16, all becomes 2020 January 11th. Okay, so now if we go back to the exploratory, we are looking at the yearly trend, right? So it looks like 2010, 12, 14, number of the new properties being added to Airbnb increase, like more properties getting added. And then like after that, seems like those numbers start kind of settling down. Still, like for example, this 2017, it's about 4,500 properties being added. That's a lot, I mean, from my perspective, but not as many in the 2014 or 15. Okay, and then we can just change this instead of year. Let's say like how about monthly trend. Then like we can see like more granular trend. So it's basically the same, like going up towards the 2015, but then after that it's still slowing down. But even within the year, like a certain time, like it increase, certain time is slow down, or like less properties being added. And how about change that to week, and then it gets even tinier or the granular. And sometimes this might help, but sometimes this started becoming a little bit too much of the noise. Depends what you want to understand. If you want to see like overall trend, then maybe year is good enough. Or even this, we can see like sort of like some trend. If this works great, that's great. But sometimes it's too much. Or if you're looking at like let's say within the year range, and then maybe this week or month trend might be helpful. Another cool thing about it, if you go down to the granular level, then you can see this sort of like sort of like we call it outlier or like extreme value. You can spot that thing. If you have like a wider, sort of like a bigger aggregation level, that's such as year, then these type of information get buried underneath. So it's up to you like what you really want to visualize, what you want to understand. But you can see change that disaggregation level. Okay, so the next topic, one thing I didn't mention is here instead of round, and when you scroll down, there's an extract section, and here you can extract the component of the date. So for example, date consists of like year, month, day, and you can actually take only the month part or day part. Or you can even take like the day of a week, such as Wednesday or Thursday type of information. So let's see, like for example, like let's use like a month short name, like from January to December. If I select this, what are we looking at is like January, like how many properties were added. And then note that this is ignoring the year. So we don't know when we say January, we don't know this is like a 2019, 2020, 2015, we don't know. Actually, all of them get combined under this January. Sometimes this is helpful if you try to understand sort of yearly seasonality. So like, maybe summertime, the most customers are coming, and the winter time, less customers are coming. That type of information can be found with this type of view. Okay, and then so now here, this is something that I covered last week, the part one. When we are looking at the chart, we are actually using a visual cue, like a lot of different signals coming out from like what we see. And then here, particularly, when we look at the bar chart and line chart, there's something different, like the way we understand, our eyes understand, right? So bar chart is we are looking at the length of the bar and we are comparing each other. And then when we look at the line chart, we are looking at actually the slope. So the slope basically telling us like it's going upward, downward, and how steep that slope is, type of information. When we look at the bar chart, we are comparing the length and then how much or how many times more than the next bar or less. So we are comparing the length. So in this case, this is again, it's really up to you. But for example, this is January, February, March. Those are like continuous. Like February is always after January. So like you want to see like how much increase, how steep that line is. That's then line chart works better. But also you can consider this each month as a categorical. So like January, February is just like a sort of like a text value or a category. Then you might want to see, let's say like for example, if you hear the July, and in July, how much more than the January, how much more than the March? Then you might want to change the chart type to bar chart. Then it's easier to compare like the amount among these categories. In this case, happen to be the month name. Okay, so that's then, and then let's go to the next topic. Is cumulative sum. Okay, so I'm going to change back to this one to be month level, and then also the chart type to be line chart. Okay, so this is what we saw already. So we are looking at the monthly trend from like 2009, or I think what year? 2008 to 2019. Okay, and how many properties being added. This chart is good to understand like how many properties are added at any given time. But there's one thing it's missing here is that if we want to answer the questions like this, how is the trend of the number of the properties at Airbnb over the years? What that point is, what my point here is that maybe like I should just kind of keep looking at here. That's not easy. So when we have this, like it says 782, that means at 2014 July, this number of the properties were added to the Airbnb. But this doesn't mean at that day, if we go to the Airbnb to look for the New York properties in New York City, you can find only 782. That's not what this says. This is 782 properties were added in this particular date or the period. If we want to see like how many properties are at Airbnb by this time, then we want to do is we want to basically calculate 782 plus 705 plus 745. All those numbers we want to add up through 2014 July, then it could be, I don't know, it could be like 1,000 or 2,000 properties, right? So like that's something that like we call it cumulative sum or running total. Sometimes we want to use that to accumulate all the numbers up to that point. then we can see how many properties are at Airbnb and how's that growing or decreasing or increasing kind of stuff. It's a similar thing. It's when you think about head counts on the company, how many employees you have, and then sometimes you want to understand how many employees added or joined in a particular year, or you might want to see like how many total employees are at any given time. So that's what we want to do. To do, we can go to y-axis, and then under the window calculation, there are a few calculation type. And one of them is called cumulative. So that's what we want to use this time. And then there are different types of cumulative calculation, but the typical thing is the sum. Basically, this is like running total or like summing up or adding all those numbers up to that point. So if I click on apply, then the line becomes kind of smooth, or it's not like up and downs. That's because numbers keep getting added. Okay. So this view, let's say like if somebody asks, hey, like how many properties are on the Airbnb in 2014, then I can say, this is for 2014 January, then I can say like 14,682. How many properties are in the 2019 November? I can say like about 50,000 properties. Okay. And then now next thing is, okay, so like now looks like there are two, so like first curve is steep up to this point. And after that, it seems like it looks like the curve, the slope got little quiet down, slow down, even though like still growing, but compared to up to 2016, seems like the slope starts settling down. And is this trend the same among all the neighborhood? And that's what we want to see. And then you can actually break this line into multiple groups. How? Well, like you can use a color. And then underneath the color, like there's a neighborhood or neighborhood group. Let's try the neighborhood group first. And the neighborhood group is like Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, Staten Island. Those are the 5 boroughs in New York City. So we are seeing like Manhattan and then Brooklyn. Those are the two sort of top neighborhood for that all the properties on an Airbnb. And you can see though, for example, like this orange is a Brooklyn, and the Brooklyn was used to have more properties than the Manhattan, but maybe like around 2016 to 2017, something changed. And especially after 2018, Brooklyn curves kind of a steady growth. And then Manhattan actually started growing faster or like more dramatic. Um, Maybe dramatically is not the right word, but it's more rapidly than Brooklyn. And then the second is the Queens. And Queens, the curve slope is pretty slow, I mean, compared to Brooklyn and Manhattan, but it's steady growth. And then like after that, there are these two areas. There are not many properties on the Airbnb. Okay. And then now, if we just broke down into neighborhood. What if like we want to break it down even further because there are other columns in this data, such as property type. That like you can pick any columns, but I'm just picking up like one that's kind of interesting to me. And the property type is like apartment or hotel or shared room or hostel or such on type of things. So I'm going to select this property type under the repeat by. Then what we get is here is like apartment and a bed and breakfast and a boat and then all different types. Okay. And then now this apartment, property type though, I can see like apartment and then almost like a same trend, similar trend we were seeing, except slightly different the way Manhattan and Brooklyn diverge. And then there's a few things happening here. Number one is when you look at repeat by, there's other group, frequency 20, bracket 35. What this means, when I click on this, so it automatically created others group right here. And what this others group is, this column, property type, let's go to the summary view. property type right here. It's a 35 unique values. And then, so when you assign the column with many unique values, then this chart, when you assign that to color or repeat by, automatically create this others group. How it does is it keeps the first 20 most frequent unique values, and then make all the others into this group called others. So we have a 20 plus one group. If you want to change it, let's say like, hey, I want to see only the 10, and then I can make everything else to be the others group. Then you can just type the 10. And then now like we are looking at the 10 plus one. And then, I'm not care about interested in the others because I have no idea what the others anyway. Then you can uncheck this show others, and then like you can actually hide it as well. So now what we are looking at here is like 5 different property types, and in each property type we are seeing the trend for like for Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and so on. But here's a problem. I can see the trend or the difference between the boroughs or the neighborhood for apartment, but it's kind of hard to see that what's going on in the other area because it seems like most of the properties on Airbnb are apartments. Then I want to actually change the scale because something going on in, for example, condominium, something going on in houses. So I want to use a different scale because right now every chart, or all the charts are sharing the same scale, which happen to be kind of optimized for the apartment. Okay, then in that case, I can actually go to the repeat by menu under the layout, and then change this like a sync y-axis among the charts. So stop syncing y-axis scale. Then this way, each chart has its own scale for y-axis. So we have to be careful a little bit because sometimes when you look at this, then you can see, wow, like hotels, there are a lot of property in Manhattan in a hotel, and then even like bigger than apartment. But actually no, because apartment, the max value is like about close to 20K, 20,000, and then a hotel is like it's only like 200. So like the scale is different. So like we have to be a little bit careful. However, it helps us to understand, like which neighborhood in this case are growing compared to others. So for example, apartment, we saw Brooklyn and Manhattan. Those are two neighborhoods super growing. But when you look at house, there's not much Manhattan, which is probably there not many houses in Manhattan, most of the stuff the apartment. But nonetheless, the Queens are super increasing or growing. For example, guest suite and condominium, the Queens are now very dramatically um, uh, growing. Even though guest suite, like number of the properties being added, it's only like 100. So like, it's up to us, like how we take that information. But nonetheless, we can start seeing more, kind of a local trend or micro trend by separating and then using the different scale. Okay. So now the next thing I want to do is, for example, color, we have like only 5 values. What if like we go to the next level granularity wise? So which is when you click on the color, and then there's a neighborhood group, but also there's a neighborhood. Neighborhood has, for example, even in the Manhattan, the West Village, East Village, Soho, West, Upper West, and then different type of neighborhood. So I want to select that, and then we might be able to see like more kind of a farther, like a local microtrend. The problem though is this neighborhood has 223 unique values. So again, the same thing happens to repeat by even the color too. When I assign the column with many unique values, then it keeps first most top more the most frequent 20 values and then put everything else under the others group. Okay, then what I want to do here though is I want to keep those 20. 20 is fine for now. I think these are like the most active area in terms of like properties on Airbnb. Then, but this others, this is basically like all the property type. Or I'm kind of like coming to my eyes is others group because others in this case it has almost like a 200 neighborhood combined together. So I want to actually remove this and then like focus on only the top 20 area. So I'm going to click on this green menu and then uncheck the show. And then this is what I get. Okay, so now here, apartment, the top two are Williamsburg and Bedford Stuyvesant. Those are the two neighborhoods has dramatically, super rapidly growing in the apartment property type. Even the condominium, Williamsburg, or guest suite, Bedford Stuyvesant, and then so we see these two neighborhood seems to be very popular. Um, with the midtown, like for example, I think the hotel, I kind of, if you're familiar with New York, the midtown is the area where the Broadways and those areas. So maybe hotels seems to be many, but even though it's only 57. Anyway, so now here, if you are in, if let's say like if you're interested in this two neighborhood, like it seems like Williamsburg and Bedford Stuyvesant, they have a lot of properties there. Um, then if we want to highlight and how those two properties are performing in each property type, then this one is kind of like a two, some property type it's easy to spot, some property type I have no idea like where those two are. Then like we can highlight those two um, neighborhood in every single chart. Then so that I want them to strike out in my eyes. Okay, so this is where like we can use something called highlight. Like we want to highlight those particular value. So here the color, like from the color menu, there's a highlight. If I click on this, and then check the enable highlight, and then like you want to select which value you want to highlight. In this case, I like to highlight this like Williamsburg, and then click on apply button. And then every chart now has Williamsburg highlighted and everything else to be the gray color. It's kind of like going the backside. And then like I want to bring this Bedford Stuyvesant and then assign a different color. And then I want to highlight that as well. Then I can see those two neighborhood, how they perform, not just apartment, but in a different property type. And then like I can see, oh, okay, this red one is Williamsburg. So Williamsburg is like a loft and then condominium and the apartment, those are the top. And then Bedford Stuyvesant is they are more in a guest suite, townhouse, and in a house. So it seems like they have like a lot of house. But again, we got to be careful with this y-axis scale. They're different, very different compared to apartment and then guest house, guest suite. But nonetheless, we can see sort of like a different sort of like characteristics between the Williamsburg and the Bedford Stuyvesant. Okay, so that's the how much we cover so far. Okay, that's good. We are on time. That's great. So from here, I like to sort of, we cover all of these topics and I like to get into like the last three topics. Okay, to do, I want to use a different data set. This is about historical stock price. And then I want to basically download the stock price for Google, Amazon, Netflix, Apple, Facebook. Those are, five tech giants. And then I want to use that data to demonstrate three things. So time sensitive filtering, and then some of the window calculations such as a percent difference and moving average. And then last not least, drawing the trend line to understand the overall trend. Okay, to do, I like to introduce how to get those stock price data because it's pretty simple. So I think it would be kind of cool to do. So click on the data frame plus button, and then there's something called extension data. This is where if you have collaboration server, you can actually add your own data extension by writing R script. Otherwise, if you're using like a regular version, accessing to our exploratory.io, then this is the area that you can find those extensions that we keep adding. And so far, we have these. And then like if you don't have anything installed, then you can always go to the add new, and then you can take a look. And then if you like to use some of them, and then you can just click on install. And that install will install some of the other packages and so on. So it might take some time, but once it's installed, then they will show up under the install. So this time I want to use historical stock prices, and then click on the import data, and then let's import those stock. So the easiest way, like I usually do, is go to like a finance.google.com or somewhere and then type like the interest of my interest. Let's say like I'm interested in Tesla. I just type Tesla, then like it gives me the code, the stock price, stock symbol. So for example, Google is Google, and then Apple is AAPL, and then Facebook is FB. Netflix is, I always get confused. So I'm gonna go to the cheat sheet, Netflix, NFLX, okay. NFLX, and then what else have we have? Amazon, okay. Amazon is AMGN, and then date, let's get from maybe 2010, January 1st. So this is the from. And if I don't specify anything to date 2, then that means I consider as a today. So over the last 10 years of the data, if I click run button, and then it will download all that data. I think this historical data is a day, each day transaction, and then except the business, only the business days. Okay, and then like, if I click save button, and then stock price, I'm gonna just stock, maybe tech, and then like that data is being imported, like 12,401, 11 rows of the data. And then the symbol has like, I have like these 5 companies. Okay, so what we want to focus today though is like I want to use this date column and also the adjusted. So adjusted is basically the same thing, almost like the same thing of this, I think it's like a close price, but except this, it's adjusted because some of the stock sometimes get split. So one stock becomes 2 stock or 3 stock sometimes. And then if you split, usually the price becomes half or a third or something like that. Then you can't really compare it historically. So that what they do is they adjust the past price, kind of reduce it down so that you can actually compare even before the split, after the split. So we're going to use the adjusted value. If I go to table view, and these are the data, how it looks. Okay, so let's visualize how the stock price over the last 10 years. So I go to the chart view, and then same thing, nothing special. So like I'm gonna assign a date, and let's take a look at maybe like a month level maybe, and then y-axis I'm gonna use adjusted. This is sum, and then you don't wanna sum up all the stock price, that's nonsense. So I'm gonna do average. So if I'm select average or mean, that means this is like a monthly average. So like you have 30 days, then you combine, and then like you get the divided by the number of days, then you get the average price. So for example, this is like a $771, 2018 August. But remember, like we had this is like average of all those 5 tech giants. That doesn't actually make sense for like getting the average. So let's separate this line by each company. And now we can see, so this orange is the Amazon, and then red is the Google. So these two was kind of like a standing out. And then these basically the range, this one stock price is, for example, like Amazon case, about like 2,000. Like if you want to own the one stock of the Amazon, you have to pay $2,000. How expensive is that? But nonetheless, that's what it is. And then underneath, here's the Netflix and the Apple and then Facebook, those three. Okay. And then now, the first thing I like to do is I want to focus on, let's say, like last maybe like 3 years or something. This is like a 2010. So, and then you can tell me why you got the data from 2010 in the first place. Yes, maybe like I should have said, 2018 or something like that. But nonetheless, sometimes you get this data, and then after that, like you want to filter to, focus on a certain area. You can actually do on the step and from the table view or by clicking this plus button, or I want to this time like use a filter only for this chart because I might create another chart tab and then like I want to visualize all the data starting from 2010. But for this particular chart, I want to filter in only the certain area. So I want to click on this filter button and then select the date column. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a filter condition. There's a couple ways to do it. Number one, the easiest way, for example, is let's say that's later than equal to, and then this is like, let's say, like, hey, you know what, like, I'm interested in from 2018, 0101. And then that means all the data, after I click run, I get only the, that information data only after the 2018 January 1st. Another way to do it, for example, if I select this how to set value year, and then let's say like I want to do like 2020, then I can get, no, 2018, then the year 2018, after 2018. So like this also like we saw in the kind of round stuff. So like 2018 January 1st actually is. So that's one way to do it. And then another thing, this is basically like I have to set which year or which date types of things. Sometimes I can do, another thing I can do is like using this like a relative dates option. So this relative dates is pretty cool. So there are a couple options. So what I want to do is this time, I want to do like, let's say like the last 3 years. So I'm going to keep it year for the date type. And the how to set value drop down, there are a few options. Here is one is the last any years. And then like I can type like a 3. And then like if I run it, then this is the last 3 years starting from today. So from today and going all the way back for the last 3 years. So therefore, it says 2017 May, because today is May. So like going all the way back to for the 3 years. And then right now, aggregated by month level. So that's why it's rounded or floor to month level. So that's why like I think maybe like May 25 data becomes May 1st. Okay. And then, for example, if I can even like go down to a little bit granular level to see it. So now let's open this filter thing though. You saw like like a bunch of different options around the last N years. So what I did the last N years is basically starting from today and then 3 years of the data. Sometimes you don't want to include this particular year, or sometimes you don't want to include this particular week. What happens is sometimes when you're analyzing with someone like a daily data or weekly data, whatever that is, and then for example, today is Wednesday. That means this week hasn't ended yet. This time, like we are showing the average, so probably doesn't make much difference. But if you are adding numbers, let's say like how many products you sold or how many access you got on your website, then this week hasn't ended yet. So therefore, you might not want to include this particular week, and then so up to end of last week, and then going all the way back to like last 1 year or 2 years or so on. Same thing for the year. This year is still like right now it's May. This year hasn't ended yet. So if we are talking about how many revenue we have, and then like you want to compare multiple years, then you might not want to include this particular year because it hasn't ended yet. We don't have enough data. Otherwise, like you're going to see like a huge drop of this year. So in that case, you can actually select exclude this year or quarter and so on. But this time, we don't really care about that up to today. And then we are looking at the average of the stock price anyway. So I'm going to keep it just this last years. Okay. So now the next thing is, so this is like a time date sensitive filter, similar to just like a filter, but you can do this relative date to using today as a sort of like a baseline. And the cool thing about though is that like when you, for example, next time, let's say a week from today or tomorrow, if you want to get the latest data, and all you need to do is just click on this button, re-import data from data source. Then it goes to the original data source. I think the data originally coming from a Google Finance page or something. But then you get the data, and then this filter gets applied. And then by the time this filter gets applied, that today is going to be the next week, if you, whatever the day, like when you run this one. So this one, that's why we call it relative, because based on the day you run or the time you run. Okay. So now, if you're in the financial, or like if you have any invested in the stock price, when you look at this data and then you see like, oh, Amazon and Google is pretty high, that doesn't mean anything. It's about like how much price you pay and how much gain you get by today, right? So let's say like if you, even though like Amazon is, like 2,378, but if you invested around like 2,000, your gain is only like $300. Is it $300? Yes. And then that's great. I mean, amazing. If you don't lose money, but not, even then, the $300. But compared to, for example, this Google or even like these small ones, let's say like Netflix, depends how much you pay. Even though the price difference can be like $20 or $50, but depends like how much you grow from what you have invested, how much you invested. So I guess my point is like it depends on the baseline. Then these numbers can be thought very different ways. So one way to do is there are many ways to compare these numbers. For example, sometimes do like, hey, like compare from the bottom. Bottom is actually here, around here, or compare from like a particular date. This is the date I invested, or maybe in this period, the first day. And even if like you want to compare to the day you invested, maybe like you can actually adjust this filter, then make that day as a first day. Then like all you need to do is just compare how much different from the first day of this particular data set. Okay, to do, you can go to y-axis menu, and then there's this window calculation. Remember, this is the same window calculation we went before, but at that time we use rounding total or cumulative sum. This time we're going to use this percent of, difference from, or percent difference from. Let's start with this difference from. If I select it, and then it's asking difference from what? Well, from average, that's fine sometimes, but this time particularly, I want to select the first value. First value is the first on this time horizon. So first day of this data. So like I'm going to select the first value and then click apply. And then all the lines, all the company stock prices now showing the difference from the first day of this data for each stock. So the first day is of course like 0. And then how much value. So like Amazon, oh my gosh, like $1,427 increase compared to the first day of this data, which is what, 2017, May 7. So that's a quite increase. And then, but we're still seeing similar, but not as, before we are seeing like Amazon and Netflix were like two big companies compared to others, but now start seeing like, especially Google and then like other companies start seeing becoming like in the same range. Amazon is just like super, wow, this is super different kind of sports. But now again, if you happen have invested in the stock, the price difference is better than just absolute price, but still, it's not how you want to look at it. You want to look at like how much percent. Let's say like you invested $1,000. You want to know not like $30 or $100. You want to know what's the percentage. A 30% increase, that means you made $300. So like you want to see like a percent of that this difference compared to the beginning. In that case, under the calculation type, like you can select percent difference from and apply. And then now, like the thing you're looking at here is, for example, Amazon 148%. That's almost like you. That's the beginning. I think it was zero, and then now, oops, I'm gonna change this. 140, 150% is extra like you made. So that's a lot. But the thing is though here is that all of a sudden Netflix is actually 170%. So if you invested in 2017 May, then you could have made like 150%. Was that 170%? That's a lot of money. So like if you invested $1,000, now like you have like $1,700 as a profit on top of $1,000. So that's great. Gosh, I should have done it. Now, Netflix, Amazon, those are two big winners. And the next one is Apple. And then the lower, the Google and Facebook. This depends which day is the first day. So it's not fair to compare. What if like we compare to the January 2009, like we might have a different picture. But let's say like we compare to 2017 May, then these are the difference. And the interesting thing is like, for example, here Apple. Apple seems to be playing the same game with Google and Facebook. But then around here, Google and Facebook kind of have been suffering. I sort of like not much, but then Apple started growing so much after the 2019 summer. And it's almost like a cross to like Amazon, Netflix game. And then recently, Apple is a little bit having a hard time going up. And this is actually because of this like coronavirus shutdown. So like all the companies stock price went down, but then Apple is having a hard time, but it's recovering. But then Netflix, Amazon was almost like nothing happened. Like they not only recovered, they actually skyrocketing even compared to even before. Okay, so this is what we're looking at, the difference and the percent difference. So now the next topic, what we want to do is I'm gonna create a new chart by duplicating it. And then let's focus, I'm gonna get rid of this window function for now. So this is the original one. And then let's focus on just this Netflix thing. Seems like it's a good stock. I'm not advising anything here, by the way, but it's just like a purely, just curious. And I'm gonna focus just Netflix. So click on the filter button and then symbol 2, just Netflix. Okay, so I'm looking at from Netflix, starting from this number 158 to this much. Okay, and then I can even like change that instead of week. I want to see like a daily movement. Okay, and then the color doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna get rid of that here. Okay, and then this chart gives me some information. Okay, like going up at this time and then going down around this time and so on. But I want to see like sort of like overall trend. This is sort of like is considering. Not being impacted so much by like a little movement, because stock price like move up and down regardless every single day. But I want to see like overall trend to understand how the Netflix is performing overall. So there are a few ways to do it. Number one is moving average. And moving average is used quite often in the financial sector, or like especially the stock price area. I thought I had. So this is, I think this is like a Yahoo Finance page, and they give you this like a 25 days moving average, 75 days moving average. And then it seems like these moving average means something, and especially when those lines cross, that indicates the stock price goes up afterwards or goes down afterwards and so on. But that's a technical stuff, and I'm not even sure that's always the case, but nonetheless. So that's one way to look at it. So let's try that here. So I'm gonna add adjusted, and then set that to same function. So like right now, like I have like a two exact the same variable of measures. But I want to make second one to be using the moving average. And then again, anytime you want to change this y-axis scale of this line or the values of the data, then you want to always go to the window calculation. And then this time we can select moving calculation. The different types of moving calculation, the typical one is moving average. What moving average is basically the one way to do is from today, instead of showing the average value of today or this week, you want to show the average of last 5 days or last 25 days. Then that actually kind of eliminate the noise that happened every day, but as you can see more like kind of a little wider term. So therefore the line tend to be smoother. So I'm going to change this window size. This is like 25 days. This unit is depend on x-axis aggregation level. So right now it's a day. So this 25 means 25 days. And then if I click on apply, then this orange line has been drawn. So this is like 25 days. Anytime like if I have this, let's say 2018, August 10. That means this is the value, 367 is the average of last 25 days. And then you can actually change this window alignment, so which is right. So that's why it's always a pass. And then if this is left, that means the next 25 days. Sometimes you want to make it a center, then like make this day is a, so previous, and in this case, 12 days, 12.5 days, and then like next one is like a 12 days. And then like you combine those, basically the 25 days, and then you get the average. So a couple few options. Typical stuff is you're always like the last 25. So I'm gonna keep using that. Okay. And then we can create that like another one, let's say like adjust it. This is gonna be the kind of like a repetitive thing. I'm gonna change that to average to show the 75 moving average. And so here, I'm gonna change that to average and then 75. Then I can basically draw, so this green is the 75 and the orange is the 25 moving average, and then blue is the original values. Then basically what we created is similar to the chart you often see on the financial website. Okay, so that's moving average. But this is one way to draw this like a smoothing line. But what we want to do is I'm gonna create another one. So I'm gonna just copy it. And then I'm gonna get rid of these two things. Another way to show, if that your interest is only to see the sort of trend, not necessarily for like average, then the other ways to do it, which is where we have a trend line. So there are few options to trend lines, but again, so I want to make it clear, like what we want to do is like instead of like following this like a zigzag thing, you want to draw more like kind of a smooth line or just give us the direction of which way it's heading, that kind of stuff. So that I can use this trend line. And then there are a few options. Let's start with linear regression. Linear regression is nothing but like drawing a straight line and then click on apply, and then you get something like this. The way it draws this straight line is at the end, the distance between this line, and all the data points to be minimum as possible. And then you ended up like having this line. And this line is using a linear regression algorithm. And then that's something that I think I have done the online seminar for specifically for linear regression. If you're interested, you might want to take a look. Okay. So, but this one, it's actually good, especially for example, like if I assign the symbol back. Oh, and I'm gonna get rid of this filter. I'm gonna disable this filter for now. I might use it later. And then okay, this gives us a kind of sort of a direction. But at the same time, this Amazon, like it's not really what this line is. It's just going up, but it's that's it. So sort of like, oh, I don't even need that. Like I can, sort of like draw the line by myself, kind of. Then might not be helpful. It gives us a direction, but not sort of like making smooth line or anything like that. If you want to see the line to matching with the original sort of like movement, more fitting, then you want to change that to change the trend line option from this straight line to curve line. The two like lowest and gam. Let's use this lowest, and the lowest is similar to the regression line, except it is trying to fit in the more like a local area. What that means, straight line, the linear regression, like try to fit in all the data points from the beginning to the end, and then matching try to find a sort of like a slope of the straight line. This lowest is, let's say like if you divide this data into, let's say like 100 different sections, and then try to fit in that section, and then you end up like connecting all those different lines, and you ended up getting this sort of like a kind of curvy line. And this is more fitting to the original data. So it's not only just going up, but it seems like the curve kind of going flat, and then recently must start going up or something like that. And if you want to even fit farther, then you can try the GAM. That's another option as well. Okay, I think this time has come, so like I'm gonna wrap up. And so we have looked at, oh, one thing I actually haven't covered, which is important, is that here, the problem of this chart is we can see only like Amazon and then Netflix, sorry, Google. But then Netflix and Apple, those are, the number itself is small. So you can't really see the movement. And in that case, you can use a repeat buy. This is what we did for the Airbnb data. Remember, like apartment has a lot of properties and other types of property don't have, so that you can't really see. So by using a repeat buy, not only separating or to create multiple charts for each, in this case, a stock, but also you can adjust the y-axis scale to make them to be optimized for each data range. So let's try that. So like, for example, here, if I assign a symbol, and I have like basically each chart for each stock symbol, but then I can adjust the y-axis by going to that unsync the y-axis, and then, whoa, this is too crazy. So like I'm gonna make that to like 3 charts in one row. Okay, then the y-axis is different, but at the same time, like again, like what we care is like how much is moves within that whatever the price range of each stock. Then this view might give you sort of better idea in terms of like understanding the overall trend for each stock price. Okay, so that's it. And then detailed steps are in this slide that I'm going to share after this session. So the video and the slide, and then data, how to get the data, well, also in this slide, so you can get those stock price data or Airbnb data by yourself, and then use it to learn, or you can share that with your coworkers or teammates or other students, and then learn these types of things. Okay. And then the next seminar is next week. We are planning for part 3. Next week, we are getting into even more fun stuff. It's visualizing variance and the correlation. The data, for example, in the price or even the stock price, data varies from 10 to 1,000 or something like that. You want to understand how the data varies. So how data distributed, where the patterns in that data. And sometimes you want to see like a price and the number of the rooms, number of the accommodates, number of the location. Those are the things are related to each other, how they are related. Those are the things that you want to visualize to understand it better. So that's the the topic that I want to cover next week. Same time, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, and then 2 p.m. Eastern time, US. And also, this is part of the data visualization workshop. We are planning to have other stuff as well. So please stay tuned. Okay.